Welcome to another broadcast of Truth Be Told. I'm your host, Tony Sweet, and joining me in studio, your other co-host, the one and only Captain Ron. Here at Truth Be Told, we can't get enough of UFOs and real-life stories of contact with extraterrestrials. Today, we have an author and former FBI Special Agent, John DeSouza, to talk about his latest book, Extraterrestrials, True Tales and Concepts of Alien Visitors. We all love the TV series X-Files, at least I did, but John is a real-life X-Files story. Through his experience and research, he will bring us the key to understanding the alternative dimensions, and we'll find out what extra-dimensionals mean. John was an FBI special agent investigator for over 20 years and collector of the real-life X-Files. The truth is no longer out there, it's here. Today, he is revealing these stories as a leading researcher and writer on the paranormal. He was an attorney and investigator who maintained a top-secret security clearance for many, many years. This background infused him with the ability to pursue and decipher mysteries that are beyond conventional abilities. So please welcome to Truth Be Told, where we believe in experience becomes truth, former FBI special agent and author, John DeSouza. And the crowd goes wild. Oh yeah.
Thank you so much. So kind of them. I would like to high five every one of them.
Hey, there's so many, your arm's going to get worn out, I'll tell you right now. Well, it's actually John DeSouza, so my apologies to you, first of all. Very excited to have you on the show. Captain Ron and I have been looking forward to this. If anybody that has watched the show over the last 4 years, that we really love talking about the secrets of the government, the secret alien programs, and anything to do with UFOs. So thank you for being here. Thank you for writing the book, and I'm excited to talk about it today. So here we're going to go. We're going to go back and find out where John DeSouza started his journey into, I guess, let's start with the FBI. How did you get involved with the FBI? That's always, for a lot of many young men, that's kind of an exciting dream. I want to do that.
You say you want to be there,
but you did
up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I was something I started very young. I'll tell you something. They don't hire at the FBI. They don't hire people at the age of 23 anymore. Not for the position of special agent. The average age today is about 31, 32 years old.
Oh,
It's
wow.
almost always a second career. They hire a lot of engineers, accountants, attorneys, things like that. But I think just when I went for the position, I think because I wanted to be I was thinking about being a doctor. I had no real talent for that. I wanted to be an attorney, so I did become an attorney, but wasn't that interested in the actual practice of being an attorney. So I just decided, when I came into contact with some recruiters, I decided the FBI that was something really interesting. And like I said, I was hired at the age of 23. They were doing an experiment during that particular generation of hiring younger people, and wow, that was hard.
Apparently didn't work out.
That was hard. Most of the people who were hired, a lot of the people who were hired at the same age as I was, didn't make it very long in the FBI. It's a very unique subculture, and you really have to learn everything that you can out of that subculture and really absorb it. So it was hard having that position at that young an age, but it's something that I adapted to and something that I learned a lot from, and eventually grew to really love and enjoy. And and I always say the FBI has taken a big beating lately in politics, and that's what it is. It is political in nature, and that's a question of the leadership. That has nothing to do with the rank and file, which is what I was for over 20 years. I was in the rank and file of the FBI. And I was an investigator on the ground. I was an investigator on the street level investigator. And those men and women they are the most professional, filled with integrity people that you could ever imagine. And they tend to be the best at what they do, especially when the FBI stays in their traditional roles, like bank robbery, kidnappings, things of that
Right.
sort.
Well, hold
And
on,
when
John.
they're in,
This is right. This is right. When I wanted to ask you right out the gate was, what do you think
yes,
about this going on right now? I've never seen anything like this where, almost a sitting president is saying the FBI is wrong on their information. I mean, isn't that an unheard of position? How do
that's
you
what
feel
happens.
about that?
I feel terrible about it because that's what happens when you have an organization that is so good at what they do, but then they become politicized because of the
Right.
leadership. They become involved in a political standoff between two different sides that are fighting like crazy for the soul of the country and the world. And you can't have an organization like the FBI involved in that kind of thing, and they are, and through the leadership now they are, and that's just going to be a source of tremendous beatdown for the organization. It's really sad. It's really sad.
horrible.
It's really
It is sad. Now, John, like the military. I mean, I don't know if it's like the military, but when you go into the military, that you kind of have a direction from working on planes to intel. I mean, to all that stuff. So when you went in, did you have a choice of what kind of direction you wanted to be as an FBI agent, or did they kind of say, "This is your strength. This is where you're going to go"?
Well, there is a little both because, yeah, you do have your strengths and your abilities, and they do tend to assign you in that direction to take advantage of those talents. Like I was an attorney, so I was always working towards a system that has to do with this the court system of warrants called FISA. And I always worked in building that structure, and I always worked, which is a system of getting warrants that have to do with a court that is over counterterrorism for the most part, because that's mostly what I worked during my years in the bureau. I worked counterterrorism, and so I worked technical sort of legal things that I was pretty good at, and that I helped to put in place for the FBI. And so yeah, they do, but here's the thing: it's a global organization, and it has incredible diversity, even all over the world. And basically, whatever you really want, you can eventually build and create in the FBI if you become an FBI agent. Whatever it is. I mean, we have FBI agents who are they're interested in art, and they're good with art. So they're working art counterfeit squads.
Wow.
Where they can travel all over the world, taking down these operations that create fake Van Goghs and fake Monets, and that's what they're interested in. That's what they're good at. That could be what their degree is in.
Right.
And so they eventually create something where they go after that, and that's all they do. So yeah, you can pretty much build whatever you're really interested in the FBI.
What if now I'm pretty good at eating? Do they have do they have a department of counterfeit food where yeah.
Yeah, that's the FDA or something.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Well, that's the wrong one.
The
Well,
FBI,
that doesn't sound as exciting to me. So,
But it seems like how you wouldn't think there'd be a thing for aliens or interdimensional area,
Right.
That seems sort of
Yeah.
how did it move from
that's what we want.
attorney to this? I mean, that's a strange.
People, I do get the question: is there an actual X-Files division anywhere in the government or in the FBI or anywhere else? And I always tell them, well, I know about in the FBI cases that turn out to be paranormal in nature. They have a special classification. It's usually called closed, and that's the problem. They tend to be closed, undetermined, with an undetermined classification. And that's how they all end up. As soon as something has a nexus as soon as something comes up with a nexus that just looks kind of, I don't know, supernatural or unexplained,
Right.
It will tend to be herded, and the people working on it will tend to be herded towards close that out and get that off our table. So unfortunately, that's really what the division of X-Files really turns out to be.
So they don't they don't even really investigate them. You're saying they just close them out and move them on.
Oh no,
they do. It's just behind the
doors. They
doors.
can sometimes investigate the heck out of them, And as a matter of fact, I would urge everyone to online. I've been used to being Googled while I'm talking. And so I would urge everyone online to go online and look up The Vault from the FBI. FBI, The Vault. And because now all the cases from, I guess like over 40 years ago, 40 years ago and further back, have been put online under Freedom of Information, have been released, the things that are declassified, that are now declassified because of age. They have now been put online under FBI The Vault. And you can go on there and you can actually search cattle mutilation cases, flying saucers, UFOs, and you will find a lot of cases. You will find a lot of things. And yeah, they have been investigated. Yeah, but unfortunately, they tend to all head towards that same classification that I said, closed, undetermined for the most part.
Right.
But sometimes there are moments when there's FBI agents who put some pretty crazy stuff in there, and that's one of the things I put in my book, The Extradimensionals. There's actually the single most downloaded document in the history of the vault. Now, keep in mind this has hundreds of thousands of documents in it, and it is available for anyone to look at. There's no restrictions, and it's free. And there's things on the JFK assassination in there. Well, lots of documents. But the single most downloaded document in the entire vault, FBI vault, online, is one single document in it numbers in the millions of downloads. And it is called the Smoking Gun document. It is a document done by an FBI agent the same year that Roswell happened, which I think was 1947, I believe. 47. Yeah, you just did a show on that recently. Right. And I listened to it. Yeah, in 1947, but just before the Roswell happened, there was an FBI agent at headquarters who wrote something called a Memorandum of Importance. And he wrote it to J. Edgar Hoover, of course. And in it, he said he had a secret informant who he couldn't reveal, who was telling him all the great truths of alien visitors, which led me to the surmising that his informant was himself an alien visitor, because that's what it really looked like from these incredible conclusions he got. And he put up into the document, he basically just listed 7 or 8 conclusions that he was told by his informant that reveal all the truths about alien visitors, who they are, what they're doing, and what their purpose is. And it's an incredible document. I put the actual document in my book. Anyone can look it up at the vault. And it's one of the things that it says is really where I got the title for my book from. It says that alien visitors are not physical in nature. They are not from our time and space. They are not coming here from another planet. It says flying saucers and the alien visitors that accompany them are coming here from other dimensions of reality. They are transiting through some sort of tunnel to here, and then they visit and they transit back out of our physical reality. And then he said a bunch of other things. He said that they tend to be larger than human beings. He said that their flying saucers have so much maneuverability and abilities to do things that our conventional aircraft don't, that any attempts by there weren't jets yet, but any attempts by our aircraft to attack them would end in terrible catastrophe. And he went on and gave a couple of more things. He said they're not here for destructive purposes, but they're here to gather information about us, and that they are, he said, supernormal in nature. And that's just an old-fashioned word for paranormal, supernatural. And he said a couple of other things, but mostly he advised us that they are extra-dimensional, that they are not physical, and that they can appear physical for short periods of time, but that doesn't last very long, and they have to go back to where they came from.
Just like a quantum leap type of a wormhole type of thing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Like quantum leap.
Yeah.
That's what it's like. And so extra dimensionality is like a bad penny. It's like a doctrine that keeps coming back to ufology, and it's never welcome. People aren't happy because people want to believe that especially in ufology, they want to believe that aliens exist out there in the galaxies,
Right.
and that they cram themselves into little flying saucers, and they travel across the galaxy, and then they get here just like we would if we were going to visit another civilization. But they're not like us. I mean, these are the conclusions that I've come to by approaching this ufology purely from an investigative standpoint,
Right.
and just not paying attention to the human drama and all the other humanizing of the problem that has gone on in the last 50 years. And so I always say that I am here to suggest the unthinkable, because the conclusions that I have come to have been things that are really going to be shocking, especially to those who've been in ufology for a while. And I don't know if it's going to be welcome, a lot of my conclusions.
I've thought of several things to ask you, but I wanted to see
Yes.
how are you able to talk about this? Like you showed that these other documents were 50 years old and they're able to release them now.
Right.
But
exactly.
these aren't 50 years old. You've recently done these. Are you able to speak freely about this?
Yes, because I use all open source information. And the stuff that was classified is stuff that's no longer classified, like the vault documents.
Mm-hmm.
And I also do examination of a lot of the classic, well-known cases that people are aware of, like Travis Walton, Betty and Barney Hill, Billy Meyer, a lot of these cases. But what I find is that even though a lot of people, and Roswell incident as well,
Right.
but here's what I find: these cases have always been examined by the same type of people, great scientists, great astronomy type thinkers who have examined these things from like a certain viewpoint, a very humanistic viewpoint. And the perspective that I bring to this as a pure investigator is just, I find that it's very different, and it reveals things that I have never seen approached before in these cases. So that's why I am able to talk about these things in a sense with a fresh eye. And I always talk about these things when it's open source, well-known information, stuff that people are familiar with, and a few cases also that people have never heard of before, things that I directly encountered as well. So yeah, there's always a way to talk about things, and I don't ever have to compromise any sources and techniques that are of a classified nature. I never do.
John, what was your take on UFOs, extraterrestrials, aliens, whatever you want to call them, before you got into the FBI? Were you a believer before that?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. When I was a child, I was about 8 or 9 years old. I think I was about 9 years old. I actually had an encounter with what you would call a UFO that was, I could tell it was paranormal in nature. I could tell it was supernatural. I was in New York City at the time. It was late at night. I somehow broke away from my family with a bunch of other little kids that were also running out into the streets late at night. It had to be like close to 1 a.m. Because there was a party. It was a massive party that we were at indoors, and a bunch of kids and myself, we broke away into the night on our own, playing games late at night. And I went between two buildings that were the tallest buildings I'd ever seen up until that time. They were the old projects, if you guys are familiar with that.
Right.
That they used to exist. And it was not a good neighborhood to be in at night. But suddenly I had a far up into the air, a black inky cloud appeared. And it was the only reason I knew it was there was because it blotted out part of the stars. Stars were gone. And that's the only way I could tell that was something. But from the bottom of this ink cloud, it was like something a squid would put out into the water. And from the bottom of that emerged this like lost in space looking disc with lights going around the bottom and looked sort of metallic, and it came down towards me. And I just stood there transfixed. And I looked up at it, and it didn't make a sound, like not even a hum, nothing. And it just kind of started coming down towards me. Two girls appeared on my left, teenage girls, and they started just screaming and hugging each other. And they yelled at me, "Little boy, you better run home to your mama. The world's coming to an end." And then those girls disappeared. I felt as if a spotlight came from that vehicle or whatever it was, that disc, and just for a moment. And then both me and the saucer like changed our minds. I took a step back, and the thing started going back up into the cloud, and the black cloud, and it just disappeared like the cartoon that just jumps into the hole and then pulls the hole in after it. And that thing just went into the cloud, and the cloud disappeared and was gone. And of course, I ran back to where my parents were, my family, and tried to convince them of what I had experienced, and nothing, absolutely nothing from them. So that was my first, what I would say, my first contact experience with something of that nature. And so, yeah, I did have that type of experience before I was ever.
Hey, John, I've been interested in this material for 20 some years. It seems to me, certainly 20 years ago, everybody the consensus was certainly that they were physical ships, like you said, coming from another star system or what have you. But I do hear in this subculture or whatever, people that talk about this stuff, that this is sort of one of the theories now that people think it could be interdimensional. There are many different people that seem to be expressing this lately. I've even heard that they say now Bigfoot they think could be interdimensional, I think, and coming in and out of things. And they're saying the ships and the aliens are all interdimensional. Does that seem to...
It would explain a lot, wouldn't it? It would explain
It sure would. It seems like
especially
an easy way
Bigfoot.
out, but I don't know if it's you know.
I've heard stories. I always admire the Bigfoot people because I'm not great outdoorsy type guy. I mean, but they are so good at what they do. They're hunters, and they're so good at what they do. And I've seen crews of men who are the hardiest men you could ever imagine, who just go out into the woods and they start tracking something that they hear those sounds, and they say it's the Bigfoot sounds. It has a very unique sort of yell. This sort of yell that it's not a bear, because a bear sounds very different. And they track this thing with dogs, and it'll be to the cliff, and there's no way out from this cliff. And they hear the snapping of the branches, snapping of small trees, and they see the snapping of small trees as they're chasing this thing, and they'll come right up against the cliff, and they emerge into the clearing with the dogs. Dogs are going crazy going after this thing. And then they get to the edge, the cliff, which there's no way, except if you're in a helicopter, to get up straight up. And there's nothing.
Wow.
Nothing there. And and these are like stories that you hear many times, and there's nothing, not even a trace of hair, not even hair and tissue samples. And extra dimensionality would really explain a lot of these stories where you have these things that are so physical, so even more physical than we are, and yet somehow they just always disappear. It's just very strange. So yeah, there's that Fortean philosophy that says that it's very possible that a lot of these phenomena, not just UFOs, not just spirits and ghosts and crypto creatures, but that they could all be extra dimensional in nature, and they could just be here. Even the most physical, overwhelmingly physical phenomena could just be here temporarily on our plane, and then just disappear back to where they came from.
Well, John,
and that's, go ahead.
No, we're going to take a quick break, but people in the chat rooms are loving this. They have some questions, so we're going to just take a quick break. We have do a couple sponsors. We're talking with a fascinating young gentleman here. I can't believe he was in the FBI agency for over 20 years. So he's wrote a book. It's called The Extra Dimensionals, the True Tales and Concepts of Alien Visitors. so much more questions. And like I said, if you're in the chat room, if you're on Periscope, if you're on Facebook Live, wherever you're at, leave the questions for us. We'll ask them. But we have more questions.
Yeah.
Fascinating subject. So don't go anywhere. This is Truth Be Told. I'm Tony Sweet.
Captain Ron.
We'll be right back after these messages. Do you suffer from anxiety, from depression, maybe even chronic pain? Well, listen up. Truth Be Told is going to tell you about a breakthrough program built on over 100 years of therapies used in America's returning veterans to help you successfully overcome PTSD, anxiety attacks, pain, and depression. The secret proven in study after study. Music therapy. The effects of music are nothing short of amazing. From strokes to PTSD, music has been shown to improve the quality of life. Now, one of the latest music therapy programs being used in America's veteran hospitals can be yours to experience for free, at home, and to help your own anxiety attacks, pain, and depression. Or just relax after a hard day. It's called Whole Tones. It takes music therapy to a new level. This revolutionary program makes use of specifically designed frequencies that have been shown to stimulate your body's natural healing power down to a cellular level. If it works for battle-scarred vets, can it work for you? Well, experience it for yourself for free at sweetwholetones.com. Like Tony Sweet, that's SWEET. Go to sweetwholetones.com. Now enjoy the show. Do you suffer?
United States Pharmacopoeia, USP, sets the standard for most food supplements and are used in over 95% of all vitamin and mineral supplements in the world. The problem is that these products have never appeared in any living tissue. They're created in laboratories and are not recognizable to the body's metabolism. Grown by Nature products are different because they use renatured ingredients, proprietary blends of essential vitamins and minerals with cofactors of proteins, lipids, and complex carbohydrates. Over 50 studies have been conducted on renatured nutrients, and over 20 have been published in peer-reviewed journals proclaiming their superiority. As a result, Grown by Nature vitamins and supplements are now recognized as simply the best available. Call 877-817-9829. That's 877-817-9829 and order your Grown by Nature products today. We are what we eat, and since we are of nature, we should eat foods in their natural form. Only Grown by Nature offers a full line of renatured nutrients. Call 877-817-9829. That's 877-817-9829 because not all products are grown by nature, but they should be.
All right, we are back. We have with us via Skype all the way from Arizona, we have John DeSouza, and he is a former FBI special agent. He wrote a book this is a guy that has the information behind the scenes. So he's got to hear about it and see a lot of this information called The Extra-Dimensionals, True Tales and Concepts of Alien Visitors. And Captain Ron, I think you have a question.
I do, because we were just talking about how the old school thinking of this alien phenomenon and the spaceships and whatnot were all clearly just in our world, in our time, just coming from another planet. But now we're saying it may be dimensional. Do you know that also in today's mainstream physics, you hear Michio Kaku, we've heard him talk, we've heard Stephen Hawking talk, that the mainstream string theory in that says there's 13 dimensions of space. Is this the kind of dimensions you're talking about within those 13 dimensions, or is this something yet completely different from that?
No, I think that's exactly it. It's quantum.
And that's mainstream stuff. I mean, that's the front-running theories today, are that there are multi-dimensions.
Exactly. And I think that's exactly what we're talking about. It's also called the Lokas. Lokas is a Vedic term that means different planes of existence in different vibrations that we cannot touch or taste, we cannot feel, we cannot see, but that exist at the same time, even though time is not a concept that applies to this, but at the same moment that we exist. And so, yeah, this stuff is out there. And in the paranormal, these ideas have been under many different names. Interdimensionality, ultra-terrestrial has been used as well. There have been many different terms. Many great thinkers, Jacques Vallée, John Keel, have also put forward these hypotheses of multidimensional realities concerning alien visitors. And it looks like advanced quantum science is kind of reaching the same conclusion. But I'll tell you, that conclusion is something that people just don't want to know about because they just want everything to be here with us.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of agendas that depend on alien visitors being here with us, being present in the same time and space as we are. There's this doctrine of alien imminency, that at any moment alien visitors could just land on the White House lawn, and they could just start handing out goodies, cure for cancer, things like that, and everyone will just be so happy. And the alien imminency is also part of alien saviors. That's another part of it as well.
That's great.
And that also is tied up intimately with the agenda for space exploration and travel, which we now see is really ramping up and exploding to a larger level than we could ever have dreamed of. There's a movie out right now I would urge people to see that's called Passengers. It's basically a 2-hour commercial for unlimited space travel and exploration. I didn't really see another reason for the movie other than that. But globally, there's a huge agenda to promote this space travel and outer space movements, and it's going to affect our kids and our descendants, because this, like I said, see the movie Passengers, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about, what is being promoted. And that's why physical alien visitors is so important, to keep that kind of going and keep that interest in that up as well as they're out there. We got to go find them.
Well, couldn't that be possible too? Couldn't they also have? Couldn't that also be a truth? Couldn't there be life on another planet as well as these interdimensional beings?
I don't think there is, and one of the reasons I go into my book is Fermi's paradox, and Fermi's paradox is a concept by a very great physicist who basically, he sat down and he went through the age of the universe. He said, look at all the stars, look at all the galaxies that there are, and he calculated how many stars, how many galaxies, how old the universe is. And he said, if even a tiny, tiny percentage of those will create life similar to ours, then according to the age of the universe and how many galaxies there are, a certain percentage should already be into interstellar travel. So he said, Fermi said that basically we should by now have open commerce, overt traffic coming to our planet from alien visitors and alien civilizations, not like sporadic, but like on a large scale. And if they were out there, they'd be here now. And he says, basically, according to time, space, and everything we know about the universe, that should be the case. And he says, the fact that they're not here is the paradox, that they're not here, but if they were out there, they would have been here by now. So why aren't they here by now in an open, overt, and well-seen way on the White House lawn and everywhere else? And he concludes the reason they're not here is because they're not out there. So, and I tend to believe that everything I've investigated and everything I've looked at, putting aside what people want to be true, and yet alien visitors are here all the time. They are here all the time. I know because I've talked to the witnesses and I've talked to the contactees, and I've even been a contactee myself. So I know that they come here all the time, even though I don't really believe they're out there, but they are here all the time. And why is that? That's because they're transiting here from someplace else, but it's not in our physical dimension. That's how I see it.
So, well, first of all, again, people are asking, they're really surprised in Periscope Live that FBI that actually investigates this. And I said, well, it's a national security. So, of course, that's something that they would probably investigate.
Our airspace or whatever.
Our airspace. But, I mean, I've had many people from MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, for the people that
Great
don't
organization.
know. Great organization. And they get reports all the time. People see UFOs all the time. Yeah. But as an FBI agent behind the scenes doing your own investigation, of those, how many our military versus UFOs from another galaxy, another dimension, and and that to add on to that, did we get technology from them?
Oh yeah, I think all that's true. Yeah, there is a certain percentage of UFO sightings. In particular, there's a big suspicion that the giant black triangles that have become much more common during the last few years than they have been in the past, that they possibly are of military human origin. And those were like the Phoenix Lights.
Right.
Which happened more than once, by the way, and there was a terrible, weak attempt to cover it up by the governments, and it was just pathetic. But the Phoenix Lights was a real black triangle situation, a black triangle that was at least a mile from wingtip to wingtip, that made no sound and floated over a very heavily populated area in Phoenix, Arizona. Again, not once, but that's happened more than once on several different occasions. And that, for instance, and those black triangles, impossibly large, things that are so big they blot out the sky, and seen by hundreds, if not thousands of people, and traveling so slow that they obviously wanted to be seen or just didn't care. But I tend to think it's more like, yes, they want to be seen. But those things have appeared all over the world. There was a time in the 80s when they were in Belgium, and they were very similar to the one in Phoenix, and they were seen for a very long period of time, for months. They were seen in the skies, blotting out the skies for some reason. So there's a heavy suspicion that those things could be military in nature and of human origin. But here's the problem with that. Having worked in national security and having in the Western world and having had contact with a lot of, not just the United States, but with a lot of Western countries, the problem with that is that if any one country had vehicles like that, it would be like immediate domination of all the other countries. Mm-hmm. Because if you had a vehicle like that on your side and the other countries don't have it, immediately you would basically own the airspace of the entire planet. And they wouldn't unless they had the exact same vehicle. You see, so anyway, yeah, it's very possible a lot of the UFO sightings and a lot of, in particular, these triangle vehicles that are seen, they could be military in origin, but every major nation would have to have it. Otherwise, if one nation only had it, that basically would just
I never
create
thought of
I
domination
never
over
thought
the
of
other.
that either. Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Totally.
Yeah, so that's why I tend to think if ships like that are of human origin, for some reason, they'd have to belong only to global government, which of course isn't government at all. It's just the global powers that basically tell the nations what to do. And it would have to be strictly under their control.
That's our Monday show. That's possible too.
Right.
Yeah, because if they let that out to any particular nation, the nation would immediately use it, dominate all the others. Because if just a couple of those ships were used against a medium-sized country, there'd be nothing they could do. I mean, there'd be nothing they could do. You're talking about ships that have they do that slow-moving thing over heavily populated areas, but then they're able to disappear in the blink of an eye as well.
Right.
Just through physical travel. I mean, people have seen them just like disappear into the horizon, into a dot
That was
in
my
just
encounter.
a moment.
Yeah.
With no noise and no kickback on the ground.
Yeah, that was my encounter when I was about the same age as you in Kansas. It was my brother came in real quick and said, "Hey, mom and dad, come out. I think it's a UFO." And my dad's like, "Whatever." He didn't. He's like, "I'm not going out." And so my mom, my sister, my brother, and I went out and we drove closer to it. We kind of was down in the valley and we drove closer to the hill, and it was just stationary, no noise, nothing. And then you hear this little prop plane. You can see it coming, and then it must have seen it because it made a U-turn to come back around, and that thing just goes straight up, gone, no noise. And I remember that when, like I said, I was a young kid, so I was about the same age. So that was my experience. So now I've had Laura Eisenhower on my show. I don't know if you know Laura Eisenhower. She's the great granddaughter of President Eisenhower. She says, she says that her great grandfather did meet face to face with aliens, the Greys. Now, could you tell us? Did you do any investigation on presidents or anybody like that met with aliens besides?
Well, the only allegation I've ever seen was the Eisenhower meeting,
right?
And a lot of people swear by that meeting, and they say it happened, and it may have been one of. And the meeting was, if it did happen, it was obviously very limited in nature and scope, because Eisenhower, shortly after that, he's the one who gave the military-industrial complex warning speech when he was finished. Mm-hmm. And in that speech, I mean, there was a lot of anger in that speech that he wasn't being let in on a lot of things that were going on. And he said in his farewell address, he said, if I'm correct, it was Eisenhower. I'm sure it was. Yeah. I'm pretty sure it was him. He said that there's all kinds of shenanigans going on in the military-industrial complex, and that they have domination over some subjects that they are not subjugating. They are not allowing the supervising of civilian rule over those subjects. And I tend to believe that was one of the issues he was talking about, was the alien subject. Mm-hmm. And if he was allowed to have some kind of meeting, if it did happen, which a lot of people swear it did, if that did happen, it was very limited, because he was pretty upset in that speech, the military-industrial complex speech. And I'm certain that it related as well to the alien agenda as well as to other things. But I've never had any direct knowledge that meeting actually occurred. Mm-hmm. And if it had, I just don't think they would send Greys to do the meeting. Because from every case I've ever looked into, every case I've investigated, and that I've looked at, the Greys are not the people, or they're not the ones you send when it's something important.
Right. Yeah, I've heard that they're not the nicest.
Or in charge. They're the underlings tend to be, right?
Yeah. They're like the underlings, the worker bees that get the ministerial work done, take care of that lab work, get those samples, do the probing. So that part of the story it tends to ring inauthentic to me, because at the very least I would see them sending a tall Grey, the supervisor Greys, right. or maybe a Nordic, those tall, good-looking Nordic ones.
Why, thank you.
Yes, like Tony. There you go.
Hey, what about John? You mentioned that you were in fact an abductee yourself.
Well, no.
Well, you said you had an experience. Contactee. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, in my book, I actually talk about my experience. Again, it was around the same time. It was around the same time when I was about 9 years old. And after I had that encounter with the ship, the flying saucer, that shortly after that, and this is one of the patterns that I see, the stalking pattern, where people will be scanned by these ships, and sometimes it's a blue spotlight, but there's some kind of a reading that goes on in previous to a real contact experience with alien visitors. And I believe that these ships will take back information, and that then a person can be targeted for contact as well, because I've seen this in many different cases. And shortly after I had my contact experience with the flying saucer, there was something that happened at my home where we had what I believe were alien Greys that actually made an appearance at my home in New York City when I was 9 years old, and they actually did make an attempt to take me with them. Where I was on my bed, I was sleeping on my bed, trying to stay awake as long as I could, doing the nocturnal watching a clock thing, and I suddenly felt my body go rigid, and then I felt hands carrying me, taking me, and these things that were carrying me were going through, were actually floating me up. It was like my body became like a helium balloon, half filled with helium. And I was it's like a plank. And they were able to take me, and they tried to take me through a wall, and it didn't work. And and then I could almost see them, but I could not really move my neck. And but I could see two others on the ground, and they were holding my parents in like a stasis so that they wouldn't wake up. And the ones that were carrying my body were trying to put me through a wall, which they were actually able to do. They were actually able to walk through the walls at that time, but my body wouldn't go through. And they were stumped. And they didn't know what to do. They just kept on trying the same thing over and over again. And for some reason, they were not able to put me through the wall that they were easily walking through. So obviously their intention was to be able to put me through that wall. After a while, they gave up. I was returned to my bed, and they disappeared. And in the morning, found out that my parents and myself, they were having a common dream that these things had appeared in our home and were trying to take me. And they all shared that dream. And I was trying to tell them it was reality. It actually did happen, and it didn't really work. They were very religious, very religious. And they actually felt that something had happened, but they put it up to being a demonic attack, an attack of evil spirits on the home. And that's basically how they explained what had happened and the shared common dream and the creatures appearing and all that.
I just keep imagining that, like, your head just keeps going boom, hits the keep hitting the wall, boom, boom.
That's what happened. It was not pleasant.
I wonder if there were like footprints on the wall the next morning.
Yeah.
You know.
Hey, John, just because of time's getting away from us, we're going to have you back. But a few years ago, I had the head of SETI on my show. I mean, the publicist that it was titled, the best UFO hunter in the world and all this stuff. She gets on my show, and I'm all excited, like we're excited with you, and I'm saying, okay, so belief and in UFOs. I don't know. Yeah, I've never seen one, so I've never. I don't know if I believe or not. And I'm thinking, how do you say you're like the world's
What a letdown.
So here's my thought. This is, I'm sure, questions from anybody that's listening to this podcast or the video. Why does the government, because it's a government facility, why can't the government just says, yes, they're real, they're here, they've been a part of our civilization from day one. Why does the government, since you were part of the FBI agency, why do they keep it from us?
I don't really think they know, in the sense that we can know something as individuals. Mm-hmm. The one moment and government is like, imagine like a beehive with all the little cells there where you put in the wax and you get out the honey, you put in the larvae. The government is like that. Everything is like a little separate cell, and you talk about thousands and thousands of them. And everything that's in every cell doesn't really know about what's in the next cell next door. And that's kind of how the government tends to be. It's a pastiche of a bunch of people who follow orders, and each unit doesn't know what the other unit is doing. Even if they're all working on the same thing and they're kind of working together supposedly, but there's the one moment in history, it was the one that you alluded to before with Eisenhower, the one moment when maybe we could say one person in national government, okay, they've got the whole story. This is it. He's got everything. And it was when Eisenhower supposedly had that meeting with aliens. And even if that were true, he still would have had just a tiny, tiny picture of what was really going on, mm-hmm. which we know about from his complaints afterward. And so I don't really think they know in a sense that they could give disclosure, or that any one person could give, hey, this is what's gone on and this is what's going on. There really isn't anybody. Now, in global government, it's a different story. And global government, of course, is not really government at all. It's just a system of control from these people. I never use the I word. I say epic always. Elite powers in control. And there's people in epic and global governance that do have the entire story and but the national governments, whether you're talking about our government or any other, they just don't. They don't know. They have no way of knowing.
Hey, before we run out of time here, we should talk about John's book a little bit.
Yes, please. Tell us about your book.
Yes, my book, The Extradimensionals, is Bad Penny. It is the doctrine that it's the explanation of the doctrine that alien visitors are coming here from someplace really different, and that they are going back to that place, and they cannot be in our physical time and space for very long. They just can't, because our physical time and space is like a canopy that is harmful to them on a long scale. So I go through a lot of cases, some of the classic old cases that people know about, Travis Walton and Betty and Barney Hill, Billy Meyer, a lot of these cases, Rendlesham Forest case, and many others, and some that people have never heard of before. And I go through these cases just purely as an investigator, using techniques that I have always learned in the FBI. And the conclusions that I come up with are kind of shocking. And a lot of the conclusions, they are, like I said, I'm here to suggest the unthinkable, that there's actually nobody in there, that these flying saucers, these UFOs, they don't have anybody inside. And that these vehicles, and these are conclusions that I've come to after a lot of investigations and a lot of patterns that I've noticed that match each other across spans of decades and even centuries. And that Roswell, the Roswell crash, was in essence a double trick as well. That not only was Roswell itself, with a government cover-up and all that, but that the cover-up was designed to fail so that people would eventually say, aha, these alien bodies were in there, and these things are just physical, just like you or I. We could all just crash our car and end up like that. Aliens are just like us. They're just like us. So in a sense, Roswell, I believe, was a double disinfo operation in the sense that, of course, there was the government cover-up, but then that cover-up was meant to fail eventually so that people would buy the entire thesis that aliens are just physical.
Doesn't this just make sense too? Like he's saying the ships come first. Like we would send drones today.
I was just thought about that,
right?
About drones.
Doesn't that just fit with our current paradigm or whatever, that we send drones first? And
exactly. And you talked about SETI before. You talked about SETI, the great rocket scientist who now is a truth teller. His name is escaping me right now. He said that SETI he doesn't believe that SETI has a real purpose, and that their purpose is...
After that one, I didn't believe it did.
Yeah. And the reason is, and he said like this, he said, I don't remember Columbus or Cortez sending smoke signals or messages to the civilization he was about to invade, that they were about to invade. Right. It just doesn't make any sense. A superior civilization has no reason to give warnings or signals or messages in the bottle to another civilization they just show up. That's what they did. That's what Columbus did. That's what Cortez did with the Aztecs. And so the whole SETI, waiting for messages thing, I just don't see it. Another one of the...
We could do him all day, right?
John, you're going to have to come back. Unfortunately, we're out of time, and this is fascinating. And I so appreciate you taking the time and doing this and contacting us. And people, please go buy this book. It's on Amazon. I'm sure you can get it on your website. Where else can we get the book? The Extradimensionals, True Tale, and the Concepts of Alien Visitors.
On my website, John Tamil Books. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere that fine books are sold. And I would like to consider this my audition for Live on the Air with Tony Sweet. If that's
Okay, you got it. Well, John, thank you so much. And the audience loved you.
I'm getting this book.
No, please, it's a done deal. So
Yeah.
please come back. We're gonna have to. Oh, are you gonna be like maybe book signing? Any conventions or anything coming up for you guys?
Yeah, I'm working on those, but I don't have them solidified yet. So yeah, just through my website and on my email as well. People can always contact me and submit stories and always get in contact with me.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much, John.
All right.
Thank you, guys. It's been great.
You got it. All right. So we're going to be back in a second, but please make sure you pick this podcast up on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, all those places. Check out our YouTube channel. Just type in Truth Be Told. Just type Tony, Captain Ron, one of those. Subscribe, leave a comment, let us know what you think. But we have another guest coming up here shortly, so we're going to take just a quick break. When you come back, we're going to
pick up John's book, too.
Yeah,
My
pick
God,
up his book.
This sounds like a fascinating...
All right, so we'll be back right after this message. Don't go anywhere.